Alright, so this is going to be a fun project. It's the picture frame. Instead of doing a miter cut, 45-degree cut, like you would see on most picture frames, I use a stile and rail method, which is good because it shows the students how like a cabinet door would be made. But because it's a junior high school, we can't make big, huge cabinets, but yet they can still learn how the door was made in their kitchen cabinets. The cool thing about this is the fact that we put this galvanized steel in there for the backer, and the student can leave it just like this and use it as a message board, or they can write on it with a dry erase marker and then it erases no problem. So you could leave it just like that, or if you had small pictures you could put them on there and use a magnet to hold a smaller picture in there, or you could just put an 8x10 picture in there and put the metal behind it to hold it in place. So there's a lot of different uses for it, and it's kind of a fun project. On the back side it's just routed out, and then I have these flex points to hold it into place. When I first made this, instead of using metal, I just used cardboard. So if you're not going to use the metal piece of cardboard, then just poking it in under these corners would help it hold into place if you don't have these. Or you can just use a nail, of course. But flex points are so much nicer, and I'll show you where to go to get those. This picture frame is a more advanced one that contains a lot of pictures. This one takes a lot more work to do, a lot more math and calculating things out to make sure that the spacing is perfect for all the pictures to fit. Here's another one that I made for my wife. It's right above our sink. It's to put all the magnets that she gets for whenever she goes to a musical, or if we go to a zoo or something, or a resort, we can put a magnet there to remember going to that particular place. Here's the biggest picture frame I've made yet. It's for a whiteboard. I was even able to make a tray for the markers and added it on there. So these things can be scaled up or scaled down to whatever purpose you need. Here's another picture frame. This one I made a while back, and I had this idea that I could punch a whole bunch of holes into the metal, so that if I wanted to, I could use a push pin to attach a picture, or I could just use magnets. Magnets seem to be the easiest way to go, so I'll probably just do that and not punch holes in the future. Alright, the first thing in making this project is I like to show the students the math behind finding the right sizes to cut the wood. So we'll go through that really quick. The router bits that you use for this are these monstrous ones here. They cut some really cool profiles. One cuts the opposite of the other, and what you end up with are two pieces that go together like this. So if you look at your kitchen cabinets, if they're nice kitchen cabinets, they're hardwood, then if you open up the door, you should be able to see that in the door of your cabinets in your kitchen. Okay, so look for that. Okay. The important thing about this profile is the fact that this distance right here is removed, so we can get the picture frame to go in there. And the length of this little piece right here is about 3/8 of an inch. So we have to take into account that distance when we're calculating how big to make this frame. Alright, so let me draw what this would look like a little bit more in depth on the piece of paper here. So we have our picture frame. We have two long pieces that go the entire length, and we got two short pieces that don't. Alright, and usually I make these boards 2 inches wide. Okay, so we got to take that into consideration. The easiest one are the short pieces. The short pieces actually, they come in, it's kind of hard to see it, they actually come in a little bit right here. So that's what that dotted line represents. They come in at 3/8 of an inch. Same thing up top. Just draw those dotted lines in there. So that little distance there is 3/8 of an inch. And we actually cut out a little bit back here too. So if you notice, we cut off that same amount. So this channel actually runs the entire length here. You just can't see it. Okay, and again, there's a channel that runs across right here and down here. Okay, so the distance inside the picture frame from this to this, so the length of that short one, if we want an 8 by 10 picture, would be 8 inches. But I like to make sure that the picture can fit in there without having to trim it. So I like a little bit of play, so I like it to add on another 1/8 of an inch. So I like to cut the small piece, this small piece right here, 8 1/8 inches. Okay, so both of those pieces are going to be the same. Now, when it comes to the long piece, we're going to have to add in the 2 inch here and 2 inch here. So you would normally just think that this would be, so if you wanted a 10 inch, they would just add 4 to it. But that's not the case, because we have to remove the 3/8 of an inch here. So we have to take that away. So because we want the distance from this dotted line to this dotted line to be 10 inches plus a little bit of play, so 10 1/8 of an inch from there to here. So what do we have left? Well, this isn't 2 inches here, this is 2 inches minus the 3/8. So in all reality, what we have here is 1 5/8 from here to here, and another 1 5/8 from here to here. So basically you just got to add all those up. Okay, so you have 10 1/8, 1 5/8, and another 1 5/8. And you add all that. When you add all that up, you get 13 3/8. Okay, and that's the distance from here to here. So that whole piece is 13 3/8. All right. So if you increase the width of the frame, you're going to have to compensate for that to make sure that you have an 8 by 10, or if you want a different size picture frame, you got to do the math to figure that out. Okay, so we actually use math in real life. So to make the picture frame, I'm going to get a piece of wood, and I'm just going to make it 2 feet long. That's a little extra. And then I'll take that piece of wood, I'll joint one side to make it nice and neat. Then I'll trim one side. Then I'll measure my 8 1/8 inch piece, cut it off. By the way, this is at least 5 inches wide because I want to be able to slice it in half. And then the other piece, I'm going to cut my 13 3/8 piece off of there. I'll have a little bit of scrap. And then take those and run them through the table saw into 2 pieces. If there's any scrap, we'll cut that off. Then I'll have the 4 pieces that I need to make the picture frame. I found a piece of alder and it's the right width. You don't want to get a piece that's super wide or that's too thin, because then you can't get the pieces out of it or you have too much scrap. Whenever you get a brand new board, you want to cut off a couple inches off the end just to make sure you don't have any cracks. Okay, so I usually cut off about 1 inch or 2 just to make sure I get rid of any imperfections. Okay, after you cut it, you can knock it and see it just fell apart. That's because there is a crack in the wood right there. So I'll probably remove a little bit more just to be extra safe. So and that one didn't break easily, so I know I have a nice solid piece of wood now. Alright, so all you need is about 2 feet. You can cut it a little bit less than that. Okay, make sure that the piece of wood is all the way against the fence. If you see a gap in the fence here, you might want to flip the board over to make sure that you get a nice contact with the fence. Okay, about 23.5, but it'll work. And I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a knot right here, and that's okay as long as the knot doesn't fall right on the cut that you're going to make later. Knots can make things look better. Okay, so now I'm going to plane this down and joint it and get it ready. Alright, with the joiner, you want to clean up one edge. Pick the edge that looks the best already so you don't have to work so hard to make it clean. Okay, what happens is on the jointer, this blade spins and cuts off the bottom of the wood. This table here, this half of the machine, is slightly lower than this half of the machine. So as it's transferring from this table to this table, you got to make sure that the piece lands flat on this one here. So make sure you are focusing on making sure that the piece of wood glides flat on this surface and doesn't rock at all. Nice clean surface. If it doesn't make the whole surface clean, just run it again. Alright, now it's time to plane it down to the right thickness. Right now it's at 0.93. I want it to go down to 80, so we'll just kind of split it up. We'll do like 87 on one side and then 80 on the other. That way I get both sides planed nice and smooth. The way to operate the machine is, first of all, check the emergency stop, make sure it is out. So you just push in and turn it. You got to be able to see a little yellow stripe there. If you don't see that, then do that. You can also use that to turn it off. So twist and push in, twist and let out so you can see the yellow. This is the on-off switch here. Make sure it's on. This right here will raise and lower the table up and down fast, and then this button right here we'll raise the table up and only up, but slowly. Okay, so what I like to do is go down. So I want 87, so I'm just going to go down till I get to 90 something, and then I'll push this button till I slowly get to 87. And then I will turn on the machine with this button right here. Okay, I just put it to 80. Now I'm going to do the other side. Okay, now I have a smooth top, a smooth bottom, and one smooth side. You should still have a rough edge. That's just going to get trimmed off and scrapped later, so don't worry about making that nice. So now we have this nice edge, and that edge is always going to go against the fence of any machine that we use. Okay, so we're going to start laying out our work. So the first thing we need is to cut off an edge, just to make sure that everything is square. Okay, so I'll just put that down right here. And you don't need to cut off a lot, just make sure it's all the way flat against the fence. And just bring this over, so you just cut off a little bit. Okay, just like a blade's width. That makes sure that this is perfectly square. Because the last time we cut this was with a rough edge, so we have no idea how square that is now that we've trimmed this down. So that's just making sure everything's good. So now we know this edge is good and the other one is bad, so I'm just going to make a mark there so I know I don't use that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the short piece first, then this will be the two long pieces. I've done that on purpose, so I'll have this knot kind of on the edge of the two long pieces, and I'll make it look kind of interesting on the sides. Okay, I'm going to lay my piece of wood down just like I'm going to hold it in the saw. I want to hold the larger piece so my hand is away from the saw, and I want the clean edge against the fence. So I'm going to lay it out just like this. I have my square edge here, and I'm going to cut off 8.5 inches. I mean 8 1/8 inches. So I'll use my tape measure. I'll make a small mark right at 8 1/8. And it's kind of a small mark, so to make it bigger I'll use what we call a tri-square and just butt it up there and bring it till it's in line with the mark, and then just transfer that mark all the way across the board. Now we can use this to make our cut. Now when you cut with the saw, make sure that the blade is going to cut right here so you can still see the line. Alright, so let's show that here. So when I bring down the blade, I'm going to look at it and make sure that the blade is on the side of the line, so that I still have 8 1/8 inches. If I cut right on the line, I'm going to lose a little bit of the wood because of the thickness of the blade. So make sure you put the blade on the right side of the line. Okay, which is the left side, so we want to keep what's on the right, so we put the blade on the left side so that we keep the line and the wood. Okay, so I'll go ahead and make that cut. Okay, as you can see, we can still see a little bit of the line, just the thickness of the line there. And so that takes care of our 8 1/8. The other piece is going to be 13 3/8. So what I'm going to do now, because I just cut here, this is now our new square edge. I still have that mark on the bad edge. Don't use this edge. We want to make sure everything stays the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the board over, okay, and I'll measure my 13 3/8 and then make a line here. The reason I do that is so I can hold on to the larger piece and cut off, the scrap right here. If we measured it the other way, we'd have a very small piece to hold on to, unless we cut left-handed, but most people are comfortable right-handed, so we'll do the flip the board over method. So again, come over here, make sure that it's the same way that you're going to have it on the saw. Clean edge towards the fence, the good end on this side now, and we'll be holding on to this and cutting off the scrap. So I'll use my tape measure again, and my pencil, bring in here, and I'm going to go 13 3/8. Make a little mark, then use your tri-square to extend the line, just like that. Okay, now this time the blade's going to be on the right side of the line. Okay, so I'm going to bring it down because this is what I want to get rid of, and this other side is what I want to keep. Alright, so again, I tried to keep just a little bit of the line, and now I have the two pieces that I need, and I'll take them to the table saw now and cut those into 2-inch strips. Alright, the table saw is extremely dangerous. We have this new type of saw called the saw stop. It should stop if your finger touches the blade, but don't do it because it's not a good idea and it ruins the blade. You'll owe me $100 if you do that. So here it is down here. On-off switch is here. If the green light is on, that means it's good to go. If it's blinking or if the red light is on, then something's not right. To turn on the saw, you pull out on the switch right here. Okay, it's the big red lever. It says push the stop, and then down really small it says pull to start. So you got to pull it out to start it. One thing you got to be careful though is that as you're working, sometimes your knee will accidentally hit the switch. So just be careful about that so your knee doesn't hit it in the middle of a cut, because that's kind of annoying when the machine shuts off in the middle of a cut. It's not going to hurt you, but you'll be like, what's going on? Anyway, so up here we have a safety guard that pulls down. Okay, as you're cutting, as you push, it should lift up. Sometimes it gets a little bit stuck and you need to give it a little bit of a helping hand, but just give it a little bit of a push, and as soon as it gets underneath that, then it'll hit the blade and start cutting. Okay, you want to set this for 2 inches. So right here is 2 inches. And with that, even with a guard and all the safety equipment, I don't want your fingers to go in between the blade and the fence when it's this close. So we're going to use this. It's called a push stick. And this sets on top of the wood and feeds it the rest of the way through. Use your hands until the board gets to about right here, and then change to the push stick, and just have the push stick waiting there for you when you get to that point. I'll go ahead and demonstrate how to cut these pieces. Alright, I'm going to do the short one first. I'm going to make sure I have the nice clean edge against the fence. Make sure the ugly edge gets cut off on the second cut. Go ahead and wait for the machine to come to a complete stop before trying to remove this little piece here, just for safety. And even then, use the push stick. I don't want your fingers coming anywhere near the blade, even when it's stopped. Okay, push that all the way through with the push stick. Some things to, if you go back and watch that again, the technique that I use is I start cutting. As soon as the piece of wood gets about 2 inches into the blade, then I remove the other hand that was keeping it against the fence, because that hand is no longer needed for a board this short, and then just finish the cut. Okay, these little teeth that pop up, those hold the piece of wood down and also prevent it from getting shot back towards you. The blade is spinning towards you, so that's one thing you got to be careful about. You don't want to be standing behind this machine when somebody is using it, because if they mess up and let go, the piece of wood might get shot and hit whoever's standing behind you. So be careful about that. Even with all the safety gear, things can happen. I've yet to have that happen in my shop, but I've seen other shops where there's a door behind the table saw and there's a bunch of dents in the door because people let the piece of wood go and it just shot back. Anyway, so sorry about all the safety, but this is for students, so bear with me. Alright, so now I have 4 pieces. The reason that I cut them to length before I rip them in half is so that they'll be the exact same size. If you have a really skinny board and you want to cut that board into 2-inch strips and then cut 2 of these out of it, that's fine. You just got to be careful that they're not different lengths. Alright, so now the next step I do is just for convenience and to make sure students don't make a mistake later on, because the next step is going to be routering the details on there. So what I'm going to do is decide what side do I want to see when I look at the picture frame. Do I want to see a big knot like that, or do I want to see a more gentle looking knot there? I think I'm going to keep the nice big huge one there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my name on the back of the picture frame, the side that I'm not going to be looking at, the one that's going to be against the wall. Okay, so you want to do this to every single piece of wood. Just flip them over and write your name on it. Alright, this part's very important. You got to make sure that your name is up. You got to be able to see your name. If you can't see your name, then you're doing it wrong. Okay? I have this router, it's marked short only on the ends. So only do the end of the short pieces. Okay? So we have the 2 shorter pieces. I'm just going to do the ends of them. Now you got to make sure again your name is up. And also the other thing you got to make sure is that you're pushing down on this piece of wood here. If you don't push down, then as it's coming through, it's going to lift up a little bit and then it'll mess it up and you have to start all over. Okay, so push down and then use this handle here to move your piece along, and it'll make sure that it keeps it at the right angle the whole way. Okay, so all you have to do is be pushing down with this hand, and then the other hand is doing your left to right, right to left motion. Always go from right to left. Okay, on this next router, Again, you're going to keep the name up. That's the most important thing. That's the whole reason why I have you write your name on it. Okay? So again, if you can't see your name, you're doing it wrong. And what I have here is called a feather board, and what it's going to do is it's going to hold down the workpiece for you, so you don't have to worry about pushing down on it this time. But I don't want your fingers that close when you're coming through, because your finger might get in there somehow. So we're going to use this instead to push the piece of wood along. Okay, there's another type of push stick. So make sure you're using this and not your fingers. Okay, so go and watch this operation. And you're only going to do this to one side. And you're going to do it to all four of them this time. The first router you only did the short pieces on the ends, and this one you do one side on all of them. Now that they've all been routed, it's real easy to put it all together. You just slap in here and like this, and then voila, you have a finished frame. Of course there's some more finishing work, but that's basically the shape of it right there. It's actually a pretty fast project, as long as all the machines are set up correctly. Okay, let's go ahead and glue this up. You're going to need some bar clamps for this. Okay, this is a bar clamp. These are fairly old. These go up and then they can lock into place. There's a little release mechanism right here. They go up no problem, but coming down you have to push the button. Okay, I'm going to place both of these clamps down. Make sure you still got some play left to close the clamp here. Put them away from each other, and okay, so we'll put the long pieces in, and those will get clamped, clamping the shorter pieces in. Fairly simple. We'll just get it close to what we're going to need, and then put the glue on and finish it. So here's our glue, and it's good to have a small stick of some sort to spread the glue inside of these pieces here. Alright, so what I like to do is get the glue on here and just spread the glue down inside. I try not to put too much glue on where the decorative part is, because when you put it together, if the glue oozes out right there, it's kind of hard to get rid of that glue. So keep the glue on this lower 2/3 part here, and don't put a whole lot of glue up there. You can put a whole lot more glue down here on the bottom, because if that oozes out, it's not going to cause too much of a problem. So that one's ready to go. I'll go ahead and do this other one real quick. I'm doing the glue up on this blue table because I don't care if glue gets on it because it comes right off. Alright, now that I got glue on all of those, I can just insert them in. You want to line them up as best as you can. Okay, now we just close those up like that, just push them closed. Then make sure, just rub your finger across there. If you need to adjust those, you can move them really quick. And then we can start clamping these down. As you do so, you should see glue oozing out the side. I'm having a little bit of glue right here, but I don't want that, especially if you're going to put stain on there. So try not to put too much glue on it, and it won't do that. I did the same on this one too. Alright, so now we just have to wait for the glue to dry, and as long as there's not big blobs of glue, it should dry fairly quickly. You can take it out of the clamps after about 15 minutes, then have it dry in your locker overnight for the next process. Just so you can see the amount of work that goes into making that bigger picture frame with all the pictures. This is the drawing that I made of that one. You can see all the dotted lines, so I can keep track of where all the pictures go in and everything like that. So kind of cool to see how that works. Okay, after the glue has dried, you want to sand down the parts where they went together to make sure they're flush. There's a little bit of a lip right here. I didn't get it perfect, so I'm just going to use a sander and sand it till this whole thing is perfectly flat. You could also use a belt sander, an edge sander. Now that the edges are flat, I'm going to put the decorative design around the outside. Remember, your name needs to be up, and do the short ends first. Okay, now the way that the picture frame is right now, there's no way we can get the picture in there because it still has this lip on the back that we need to get rid of, and we're going to use a router to do that. We're going to use a hand router this time instead of a router table. We're going to put this again, so anytime you're using a router, put your name up, and that helps. Okay, now I have this piece of wood clamped to the table, and then on the vise, a lot of people wonder what this part is for that comes up. Well, you put that up and so you can use it to clamp stuff to the top of the table using a board like that. Older tables have a hole drilled in, a whole bunch of holes drilled in. You can drop down a thing that goes in there and provides this, but I don't have those holes, so I just clamp a piece of wood down. Okay, so you just put it in there like this, clamp it down, then they'll use a router that is like this, and has this ball bearing right here. That ball bearing will ride against the bottom lip while the router cuts off the top one. Okay, so when you're doing this, this can be kind of scary. There's a trigger right here, and just touching that trigger will cause the router to go. So make sure it's not touching the table when you pull the trigger. Make sure it's not touching anything for that matter. Okay, so put it down on the table, on top of your frame, so it's not going to hit the table. Don't have the bit touching the frame. Have it back a ways, and I want you to go counterclockwise. Now, going counterclockwise is actually opposite of what you would normally do, but the reason why is because I found if I go the other way, it really spits a lot of pieces of wood at you. But going counterclockwise, the rotation of the blade is going to want to force the router in that direction. So you got to move it, but at the same time hold it back. Okay, so I'm going to start it, move it until that ball bearing touches, and then go around the picture frame. Okay, and that will make room for the picture to go inside.